Hey folks, Uncle Bill here from Deadpit.com. And as Halloween's rapidly approaching, trying to figure out what to do video, Diary of the Deadpit things on, and I thought to myself, the one thing I haven't done that I really want to do is talk about one of my favorite all-time directors, which is George Romero of the Dead series and films like Martin and Night Riders, and a lot of other things that people don't remember from him. But since we're getting close to Halloween, let's go through Romero's Dead. I don't even know what it is now. I guess it's like a syncology, something, because I don't know what comes after quadrilogy. So it's whatever that is, one more after quadrilogy, since Diary of the Dead came out, and they're already working on a new Diary of the Dead. So let's start with the original 1968 seminal classic that is Night of the Living Dead. I'm sure anyone watching this has already seen this movie, and every good horror fan already owns it, but this is the version of that movie to have, because first of all, it's restored, but most importantly, it contains the documentary done by Michael Felsher, who really sincerely cares about the Dead films. It's one of the most extensive documentaries I've ever seen on any horror disc. So everybody owns a copy of Night of the Living Dead, because it basically came with, samples of Tide at one time. I've got a horror CD somewhere around here. It's got like horror soundtracks on it, and it's got a copy of the DVD of that in it. It came in it for free, but it's public domain. But this is the edition to get. This is the Genius Products Dimension edition that just recently came out. I encourage everybody to pick this one up. So what is Night of the Living Dead? It's a pretty simple story about a group of people who are stranded in a farmhouse after a zombie outbreak happens in the middle of, I guess it's Pennsylvania. And you've got Dwayne Jones playing the lead hero, and in 1968 to have a black lead hero was almost unheard of, but that was one of the few things in this film that Romero said wasn't really planned. He just thought that Dwayne Jones was the best actor. You got Judith O'Dea as Barbara, and her brother, played by Russ Striner, Johnny, and she's out at the beginning of the film. She's out in the cemetery. Everybody always remembers this scene, and her brother starts with "They're coming to get you, Barbara," and they actually do in fact come to get her, and they end up taking him out in the process. And she runs to a farmhouse where Dwayne Jones, who's playing Ben, is holed up, and he is kind of holed up in this farmhouse with this group of this family called the Coopers, and the people who actually own the farmhouse, and they're I don't remember if it's their nephew or something like that, but they're all holed up together. And of course, the asshole Cooper wants to stay down in the basement, and Ben wants to stay up top because he thinks he can protect and board up the house so the zombies can't get in. So this is the war that's going on inside while the zombies are trying to break in. I think that it's amazing today to think back that the flesh-eating zombies that we know today, that have pretty much become the zombies. You don't ever see zombies like, Haitian zombies anymore. You always see the flesh-eating ones. Were started basically in this film. And Romero is responsible for starting a whole genre, really. And this film had one of the better endings of any horror film to come out around this time, because you never really see it coming until it happens. But it's claustrophobic, but yet he was genius in the fact that he didn't have enough money to go out and get shots of outside places and have second unit directors and stuff like that. So he had televisions in the house where he would broadcast these weird emergency broadcast system reports that made it even more creepy, like it was really happening, and you can only imagine what that would be like. So just out of necessity, it made that movie even better. So we fast forward a little bit. He's already gone through a couple of films. I think he's made Martin by this time, which a lot of people consider to be one of his better films. It's not a zombie-related film, but years later, he would go on to make my favorite all-time horror film, one that I grew up on. A lot of people grew up on this film, Dawn of the Dead, and this is the Ultimate Edition. And if you don't have this one, I highly, highly recommend you buy this one, because it has 4 discs, one with the US theatrical version, one with the European version, one with the extended cut, and one of just documentaries. So Dawn of the Dead was basically responsible, single-handedly responsible for ushering in the splatter genre of films. Tom Savini really got his start on this film. I mean, he had other films before this, but this is the film everyone kind of took notice of him because of the amount of gore in this film. Kind of taking off where Night of the Living Dead left off. You know, the zombie outbreak is still going on. There's a group of survivors. It's gotten much worse now, and they're trying to get anywhere away from the city because the city is becoming this huge cesspool of violence and zombies and stuff. So they take off in a helicopter. You got Ken Foree, Galen Ross, David Emge, and Scott Reiniger are all the main characters. So that'd be Fran, Roger, Peter, and Fran, Roger, Peter, Flyboy. So yeah, there you go. And I guess Steven was his name, but Flyboy is what they called him. And they're taking off in this helicopter. They go and they're looking for a place to go. And first they stop down to get gas and end up in a lot of trouble in this little mini airport thing where they're attacked by a group of these zombies, with the zombie from the post and all this stuff. And well, I guess the background is that they're two of them are SWAT team members, and two of them work for a local TV station. And they're all together. And they finally, after they visit a couple places, end up at a mall. And in this mall, they've got everything that they could ever want. So they try to board it up, not necessarily board it up, but they try to put trucks in front of the doors to keep the zombies from getting in. They try to kill all the zombies inside, and it all works perfectly until one of them gets bitten, and then he dies, and then a biker gang invades the mall, and there's this huge shootouts and like a war between the bikers and then the group that's in the mall, and it culminates with one of the most memorable, gore-drenched group of sequences that you could ever imagine. So that's Dawn of the Dead. It's my favorite because I guess it's the most grand of them all. Out of all these films, it's a biker film, an adventure film, a horror film, an action film. All these different genres into one. Great score, probably my favorite score of all time by Goblin. And just, I don't think people realize how good the actors in this movie were too. Like Scott Reiniger and Ken Foree in this film, this is like, they never gave, well, Scott Reiniger never did anything else really other than this, but Ken Foree never gave a performance like this again. It's just one of the best understated performances in any film, and genius film. Which brings us up to 1985, I believe, is when this film came out. And this is Day of the Dead. This is the newest version of this film, I guess, from our good buddies at Anchor Bay. And this one was not as popular at the time, especially. It was considered a big letdown, and over the years it gained a lot of notoriety for mostly the gore sequences that Savini created. It's considered to be his best film overall for the gore effects and special effects in the film. I think it's one of the better films for characters too, because the characters were so over the top that you had to love them. They're almost like caricatures. You got Captain Rhodes. It's one of the best characters. You got Steel with Gary Clark. That's a great character. Bub, the pet zombie that's on the cover. So anyway, it's way into the future of the zombie outbreak now, and a group of scientists and a group of military men have taken refuge in this underground bunker in the middle of Florida, I believe, and there's like a splitting of the factions. The military guys basically want to try to kill all of the zombies, and the scientists, led by Dr. Logan, kind of want to find a serum or some way to reverse the zombie epidemic, or they want to try to train the zombies to behave like human beings. And so they're kind of divided, and Captain Rhodes' character, played by Joe Pilato, is one of the best characters of any of the films in the series. He's this demented little, Napoleon-esque guy who demands, martial law and order and all this stuff. And when he finds out along the way that the scientists are not necessarily on the up and up with him about everything that's going on. And there's like a kind of internal war between the two groups that leads to zombies getting loose in the facility. Where in this facility they're testing the zombies, like they round them up in these little corrals, take them in for scientific experiments, and try to fix them and all this stuff. So they take all these people in, and they're cutting them open and drilling on. That's where all the gore comes from. But they eventually invade the underground bunker, and all hell breaks loose. And the ending to this one I never did like, because I never really fully understood what it meant. It's very ambiguous in a lot of different ways about what it is. Is it a dream? Was the whole thing a dream? Or did they actually get to this location? I don't want to ruin anything, but when you watch the film, you understand. But I think one of the main reasons this film was the best for Savini is he actually had Greg Nicotero, working for him on this film. I think that's why the effects show up so well. I could be wrong, but it's also one of the better films for memorable quotes and stuff like that, especially from Pilato, who is still a fucking character of a guy if you ever meet him at conventions and stuff. Which moves us up to one that was 2005. I saw this one at the theater, and looking back now, this is Land of the Dead, the unrated DVD that came out. Looking back now on this film, maybe it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was bad, but considering the one that we're going to talk about a little bit later, it wasn't that bad, because you've got the biggest budget Romero ever had to date to work with one of these films. It was a very theatrical film, and the problem with this movie, and it becomes really obvious when you watch it again, there was two big problems for me. The cast, like once he got money, he tried to put together a cast of people that would kind of be known by, the everyday Joe Schmo, and they didn't really work that well, especially John Leguizamo. He just didn't look like he knew what the hell he was doing in a film like that, which is understandable. But, Asia Argento's in it too, and even her role's kind of weird. But the other big problem was they started to use CG in this film for the first time. And I hate CG, and I hate CG gunshots, and I hate CG blood, and anything that takes you out of a film that way, and this has got a lot of that stuff in it. So, in this one, you got a group of, they're kind of like survival rat type of people, and the government has kind of isolated an island that they kind of like an Escape from New York that they use for all the civilians to be on, where zombies can't get in, and then all the people that aren't super rich are kind of excluded to live with the ranks of all the undead, and they can't get over there, and the whole island is ruled by this president who is played by Dennis Hopper, which is another role that he didn't really look like he knew what he was doing in. And so they put together, the John Leguizamo character puts together this idea that he'll steal this giant tank thing that can shoot missiles and hold the island, all the people, the government of this island, he'll hold them kind of hostage until they give him a certain amount of money or let him come over there, or something to that effect. And I'm kind of torn in this movie because it had some good aspects. I like the zombies in it. The Big Daddy zombie, Eugene Clark, was actually pretty good now that I think about it. He's very memorable, to say the least. And it had like the Butcher zombie and the one that played by Jennifer Baxter, who's like a softball zombie with half of her face kind of removed. Like I said, the problem is the cast, and it's very Canadian. If you've ever seen Canadian films, this is one of the ones that he filmed in Canada, they always have a certain look to them. And all the people that they got that were like the bit players, like the Simon Baker guy, and these Canadian actors, I don't know what it is about them. They're like assembly line-esque actors. They don't really have any character to them like the American actors. But, it's a mediocre entry into the series at best. He was trying at this point, and it brings us to the point where I don't necessarily think he was trying or is trying anymore, which is Diary of the Dead. This is a Dimension Extreme release. I tried really hard to forget about this movie directly after I watched it. I don't even really include it in the series. It's supposed to take place around the same time that the 1968 film took place, in that it's the beginning of the zombie outbreak. There's a group of students, and one of them has a film camera and like a handheld camera, and he wants to document as the zombie epidemic takes place. So it's kind of like Blair Witch meets, Night of the Living Dead. But the thing that was so stupid about this film, in my opinion, was he had shots in this film that he had to do them away from the camera, which means that it wasn't all done with a handheld camera. There were some shots that were done from like surveillance cameras and all this stuff, and it's just that takes, if you're going to do a film that's supposed to be about really documenting all the stuff that's going on, and you've got intertwined in that surveillance footage cameras that would have no place in there to that point, it just doesn't make any sense. Plus, the characters fucking suck in this movie. God, I can't even tell you. The acting is horrible. Like, you have to act. You can't, it's not real, okay? No matter how much you want to make it real, you still have to act in this film. You have to even act like you're not acting, but you have to do something. You can't just poorly act, and that's what happens in this movie a lot. And other than that, there's a couple of things in this movie. The Amish guy is like the comedic relief in the middle of all of it. I guess he's okay. He's not that great. It's definitely not savable. It doesn't save the film or anything. But, considering everything, by far the worst entry in the series. There's a lot of stuff about it that's just horrendous, really. And I hate to say that because I really love Romero. But I hope that when he does the new Diary of the Dead, that he doesn't even go near the handheld aspect of it again. But I have a feeling that he probably will. So real quick, here's a bonus review of a film, the Dawn of the Dead remake. Now, you would think that because Dawn of the Dead is my favorite all-time horror film, that I would probably be against this remake. And keep in mind two things. Number one, this remake happened before the remake trend really exploded. And number two, this was before they had like a set formula of how these remakes were supposed to go, which is they don't get a lot of stars, they use the name value only, it's for the teeny bopper crowd. This film was actually incredibly confident because they had James Gunn as the writer, the guy that would go on to make Slither, and he wrote a lot of the trauma movies that I really enjoyed. And Zack Snyder was the director, who would go on to make 300. So I think it's pretty safe to say that they had a pretty competent group of people working on the scenes of the film. Plus, they actually had Sarah Polley and Ving Rhames and a lot of really good actors in this film. Same premise as Dawn of the Dead, except the zombies in this film can run, and they're much more aggressive, and they get holed up in the same place, a mall, but the way that they meet is completely different. They're just kind of like strangers. One of them's a cop, one of them's a nurse. They're from all different places. They don't know each other beforehand. They kind of wind up at this mall. Great gore in this film. The unrated version, if you don't have that, the director's cut, it's amazing. Scary fucking film too. Like the opening scene where the kid gets bitten and bursts through the door. And she's like a little cat like creature thing, where she's like a cat speed and stuff. Just a great scary film. And the ending of it, where they take off in the bus and all hell breaks loose amidst this big crowd of zombies, I think that it was so stylized and it so veered away from anything that would really remind you of Dawn of the Dead that it's probably the best remake to ever be made of a horror film, and I really enjoy it. So I think, and I know Romero doesn't like fast zombies, but hey, I don't like Diary of the Dead, so we all got something. So That's it. Check out the show. We're going to try to get some interviews with some folks that you all are well versed in soon on Deadpit.com. Until then, have a happy Halloween. Get out your candy corn and your butt plugs and whatever else, and have a ball, folks. See you.